You think you can put your filthy hands on my future mother-in-law? You worthless Puerto Rican trash. Serena Castellanos' voice sliced through the quiet afternoon like a blade. Isa Navarro, only 27 but carrying the composure of someone who had survived far worse, was crouched low, her arms wrapped protectively around the frail frame of Rosa Moretti. The 75-year-old woman trembled violently, her eyes wide with terror, still recovering from a stroke that had stolen half her words. Serena's designer stiletto connected with Ila's ribs in a vicious kick. "Get your hands off her, you meddling piece of garbage," she hissed, venom dripping from every syllable. Isa gasped through the pain. "Please stop, she's hurting. Please don't hurt her anymore. She's your fiancé's mother, think of her heart. She can't take this." But Serena only laughed, a sound like nails scraping glass. She snatched a crystal vase from the mahogany table and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, missing Isla's head by inches. Isla flinched but refused to release Rosa. "Mrs. Moretti," she whispered urgently. "I've got you. Breathe, please breathe." From the arched doorway, a voice cut through, low, controlled, dangerous. "What the hell is going on here?" Dante Moretti stood framed in the entrance 63, immaculate in a black three-piece suit, his steel-gray eyes taking in the scene. His mother cowering, his fiancée trembling theatrically, and the Puerto Rican caregiver kneeling with her arms wrapped around Rosa. Serena whirled toward him, her face pale, but her eyes glittering with calculation. "Dante, thank God you're here. I tried to stop her, but she pushed your mother. I couldn't pull her off." "That's not true," Ila's voice came out. She looked up, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I was trying to protect her. She was about to shut your mouth." Serena screamed, pointing a manicured finger at Isla. "You think you can waltz in here and play hero? You think anyone's going to believe you over me?" She turned to Dante, her voice quivering perfectly. "She's dangerous. Look at her. Look at my arm." She clutched her own elbow, though not a single mark existed. Dante's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Isla like a predator assessing prey. "Step away from my mother." Isla's heart plummeted into her stomach. "Sir, please listen to me," I said. "Step away." Dante's voice cracked like a whip, sharp enough to cut steel. Serena exhaled as if relieved. "Thank you. Finally." She terrified me. Isla gently shifted Rosa against the armrest of the chair, her hands trembling. "Mrs. Moretti needs a doctor. Please don't." "I trusted you?" Dante muttered more to himself than anyone. Rosa, silent and ashen, reached a shaking hand toward Ila, but Dante didn't see. "You're fired," he said flatly. "Pack your things and leave now." Isla's lips parted, a breath of protest rising, but she swallowed it down. She had seen this before. When truth collided with power, power always spoke louder. She rose slowly, straightening her uniform with quiet dignity. "I was only trying to help," she whispered. Serena stepped closer, her voice low but razor sharp. "Get out before I have Dante's men drag you out. You've caused enough trouble." Isla glanced one last time at Rosa's stricken face, then at Dante's cold, unforgiving eyes. "Please," she said softly, "don't leave her alone with this woman again." No one answered. She turned and walked out, past Serena's triumphant smirk, past the marble foyer where shattered crystal glinted like broken promises. Outside, rain began to fall cold, steady, relentless. Her old Honda Civic waited at the end of the long driveway. Isla gripped her bag tighter and kept walking, her back straight, even as her heart cracked into 1,000 pieces. Behind her in the shadow of the Moretti mansion, the only person who had truly protected Rosa was disappearing into the storm, carrying the weight of a crime she never committed. If you want to see Dante discovered the devastating truth, hit that like button right now. Share this story with someone who loves justice and drama, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the Mafia boss finally learns he destroyed the only person who truly loved his mother. The rain still would not stop when Isa's old Honda Civic turned into a gas station on the outskirts of Chicago. She shut off the engine and sat in silence in the dark with only the sound of rain tapping steadily on the roof of the car, like a sad song with no ending. Isa pulled her shirt up and looked at the bruise spreading along her side where Serena's high heel had come down. The pain throbbed in slow waves, but it was nothing compared to the ache inside her chest. She closed her eyes and the image of Mrs. Rosa rose up in sharp, undeniable detail. 2 weeks earlier, the older woman had slipped the silver bracelet off her own wrist and placed it into Isla's palm with a gentle smile. "You have a rare heart, my girl. Do not let anyone take that from you." Isla remembered refusing, saying she was not worthy of a gift so precious. But Mrs. Rosa had tightened her grip around Isla's hand, her voice trembling, yet firm with resolve. "It is because you think you are not worthy that you are more worthy than anyone." Isla opened her eyes, reached into her pocket, and drew out the bracelet. It was icy in her palm, and somehow it still gave her a faint warmth. She clenched it as if she were holding the last thread that connected her to the woman she had sworn to protect. Where was Mrs. Rosa now? Was she all right? Was Serena doing something to her? The questions spiraled through Ella's mind like a storm, but she knew she could not do anything. She had been thrown out. She had no rights left. Ella took out her phone and scrolled through a contact list that was almost empty. She had only one friend, Carmen, her roommate back in nursing school. She pressed call. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. Then it went to voicemail. "This is Carmen. I can't answer right now. Leave a message." Isla did not leave a message. What would she even say? That she had just lost her job for trying to protect an old woman? That she was sitting in her car in the rain, not knowing where to go? Not knowing what to do, she tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, rested her forehead against the steering wheel, and for the first time since leaving the Moretti mansion, she allowed herself to cry. The tears fell in quiet streams, blending with the rain outside. An hour later, Isla found a cheap motel at the edge of the city, $40 a night, cash only, no questions. The room was tiny and smelled of dampness and old carpet, but at least it had a bed and a roof. Isla lay down and stared at the ceiling, blotched with water stains, the bruise at her side flaring each time she breathed. She thought about her life. Orphaned at 8 years old, raised in the temporary houses of the foster care system, beaten, starved, treated as if she did not deserve to exist. But she had survived. She had taught herself, pulled herself up, built a life with her own hands. And then, just when she thought she had finally found a place to belong, just when she thought she had done the right thing, everything collapsed again. "Doing the right thing," Issa whispered into the darkness, "is never rewarded." She closed her eyes and drew in a long, deep breath. "But if I could live it again, I would do the exact same thing." Because Issa Navarro was not the kind of person who would leave an old woman to be beaten, even if it meant paying the price with everything she had. She was on the verge of falling asleep when her phone buzzed. Ella opened her eyes and reached for it. A text message from an unknown number. She frowned and opened it. "Thank you for protecting her. Someone is watching. Do not give up." Issa sat up fast, her heart tripping over itself. Who sent this message? How did they know what had happened? What did "someone is watching" mean? She stared at the screen, questions spinning through her head like a cyclone, but no answers came. Only the soaked Chicago night beyond the window, and a small, fragile spark of hope newly lit in the dark. Who had sent that mysterious message? At that same time, at the Moretti mansion, darkness had settled into every corner of the vast bedroom. Rosa Moretti lay motionless on the king-size bed, her eyes wide open, fixed on the elaborately decorated ceiling above her. This was the first night without Isla at her side, and the room had never felt so cold. She tried to move her lips, tried to force shattered sounds out of her throat. And no, not her. Her voice was only a thin, fragile whisper. The aftermath of the stroke 3 months ago that had stolen half of her language from her. But her mind was still clear. She remembered everything. She remembered Serena slapping her, kicking her, threatening her. She remembered Isla rushing in like an angel, using her own body to shield her. And she remembered her son driving away the only person who had truly protected her. The soft sound of the door opening made Rosa flinch. Serena stepped inside, her movement smooth and graceful like a cat stalking prey. She closed the door behind her, and in an instant, the sweet smile she had worn all day vanished without a trace. Her face turned cold, her eyes sharp as blades. "Hello, Rosa." Serena said, her voice stripped of all sweetness. I hope you sleep well. That Puerto Rican girl is not here to bother you anymore. Rosa tried to turn her head away, unwilling to look at the person who had tormented her, but Serena would not allow it. She walked to the bedside and leaned down, her face only inches from Rosa's. You know, none of this had to happen, Serena whispered, her tone dripping with bitterness. All you had to do was sign those papers, transfer the property rights to me like we agreed, but no. You had to be stubborn. You had to refuse. And now look at what happened. Rosa's eyes widened and she strained with everything she had to speak. My son, Will. Will what? Serena cut in, sneering. Believe you? An old woman who has had a stroke, who can't speak clearly, whose mind is confused. She straightened up and folded her arms across her chest. Dante loves me. Dante trusts me. He just fired that little maid without a second thought. Do you really think he would believe you over me? Rosa felt tears surge up. She reached toward the small bell on the nightstand, the bell placed there so she could want to call the help whenever she needed. But Serena was faster. She snatched the bell and hurled it into the corner of the room. Do not even think about calling anyone, Serena hissed, her eyes blazing with rage. Listen to me, old woman. One word to Dante. Just one word, and I will make sure he thinks you have completely lost your mind. I will put you in a nursing home, lock you away in a tiny room, and you will never see your son again. Who is going to believe a stroke patient over his fiancée? Rosa lay still, tears sliding down her wrinkled cheeks. She was powerless. She could not speak. She could not protect herself. And the only person who had protected her had been thrown out. Be good, Serena said, stroking Rosa's hair as if she were petting an animal. Soon I will be the mistress of this house, and then you will learn how to behave. Serena turned and walked out, closing the door behind her. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway. Rosa lay there in the dark, and her tears kept falling. She prayed. Prayed for someone to see the truth. Prayed for Isla to be safe. Prayed for her son to wake up before it was too late. And in the corner of the room, hidden behind an old painting, a tiny security camera was still quietly recording. It was the camera Rosa had secretly asked Marco to install before she had the stroke, when she began to suspect Serena's true nature. No one knew it existed, not even Serena, and it had captured everything. Rosa's secret camera had recorded it all, but would anyone ever find it? In the dim office downstairs, Dante Moretti sat alone in his leather chair, the third glass of whiskey in his hand. The light from the desk lamp cast shadows across his sharp features, picking out the gray eyes fixed on nothing at all. The room was suffocatingly quiet, broken only by the steady tick of the wall clock. He lifted the glass to his lips, letting the amber liquid slide down his throat. But not even the most expensive whiskey could drive away the image that kept looping through his mind. The eyes of that Puerto Rican girl, dark brown, rimmed with tears, and yet never begging. Eyes that met his with something that was not fear, but disappointment. And her last words before she walked out, please do not leave her alone with that woman again. Dante clenched his jaw, trying to shove the memory aside. She was only a maid. She had no right to speak about Serena that way. Serena was his fiancée, the daughter of Don Castellano. This marriage would strengthen the alliance between the two families, creating the strongest power in Chicago. He could not let an unknown nurse ruin all of it. A knock at the door pulled Dante out of his thoughts. Come in, he said, his voice rough. Marco Vital stepped inside the tall frame of the 40-year-old man filling the doorway. Marco was Dante's right hand, the one who had served the Moretti family for 20 years since Dante's father was still alive. If there was one person in this world Dante trusted completely besides his mother, it was Marco. Boss, I have the report on this week's shipment, Marco said, setting a file on the desk. But Dante did not look at the file. He looked at Marco and suddenly asked a question that startled them both. That girl, Isa Navarro, what do you know about her? Marco hesitated, a flicker of unease passing through his eyes. She has worked here for 6 months, boss, taking care of Mrs. Rosa. I have nothing to complain about with her. Not that, Dante cut in today. What did you see before I came home? Silence stretched. Marco looked down, then up again, his face tight with hesitation. Boss, I'm not sure I should say. Say it. I saw something before you got back. Marco drew a deep breath. Miss Castellano, she was shouting at your mother. I did not see clearly, but she was very loud, very aggressive. Dante set the whiskey down on the desk harder than he meant to. Serena is my fiancée. This marriage will strengthen the alliance with the Castellano family. Do you understand what that means? I understand, boss. Then do not question her again. Marco lowered his head, but his eyes did not look convinced. Yes, boss, I only wanted you to know what I saw. He left the file and walked out, leaving Dante alone with his tangled thoughts. Dante sat for a while longer, then stood. He needed to see his mother. He needed to be sure she was all right. He went up the stairs in silence, his footsteps quiet by habit, the way of a man long accustomed to the dark. Rose's bedroom lay in the soft glow of a bedside lamp. He pushed the door open and looked in. His mother was sleeping, or at least she looked as if she were sleeping. Her face was calm, her breathing even. Dante felt relief loosen inside him. He turned to leave, then stopped. Something made him look back, his mother's wrist. Dante stepped closer and bent down, and he saw it. A bruise fresh on the inside of Rose's wrist. That place. It could not have been caused by a protective embrace. If Isla had been holding his mother to shield her, as she claimed, the bruises would have been on the shoulder, on the back, in the places pressed together in an embrace. But this was the wrist, the inside of the wrist, as if someone had grabbed hard, yanked violently. Dante stood frozen, staring at the bruise. In his mind, the afternoon replayed itself, Serena crying, pointing at Isla kneeling, holding his mother reaching toward Isla as if she did not want her to go. Please do not leave her alone with that woman again. For the first time, the wall of trust Dante had built around Serena showed a small crack, and he knew that once a crack appeared, it would never heal on its own. Dante began to doubt, but was it already too late? The next morning, Dante could not sleep. The image of the bruise on his mother's wrist haunted him all night, twisting in his mind like a question with no answer. He sat in his office while the sky was still dark, waiting. At exactly 7 o'clock, Marco knocked and stepped in as he did every day. But today Dante did not ask about business. He rose, walked to the window, and kept his back to Marco. I need you to do something, Dante said, his voice low and unhurried. Find out everything about Ella Navarro, her background, her family, her past, her previous work, everything. Marco nodded without asking why, but Dante was not finished. And watch Serena secretly. I want to know what she does, who she meets, who she talks to when I am not with her. This time, Marco could not hide his surprise. Boss, do you suspect her? Dante turned, his gray eyes cold as steel. I suspect everyone. That is why I am still alive. Marco understood. In the Mafia world, blind trust was the shortest road to death. He lowered his head and left, beginning his new assignment. At the same time, upstairs, Serena stood in the bathroom with the door locked tight, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was tense, almost a hiss through her teeth. That old woman almost ruined everything. If that Puerto Rican girl had not been thrown out, our plan would have been finished. The person on the other end said something, and Serena's face tightened. I know, but you have to understand. She still will not sign those papers. I need her to sign before the wedding. If not, once I become Mrs. Moretti, everything will be much more complicated. She paused, listening, then nodded, even though the other person could not see her. Let me handle it. I have hired a new nurse. She will know how to deal with it. Serena ended the call, looked into the mirror, and smiled a smile as cold as glass. Just as Serena said, the new nurse arrived. Bethany was a middle-aged woman, her face as hard as money, not a hint of warmth in her eyes. She had been hired personally by Serena, and from the first moment, the way she treated Rosa made it clear she was not a caregiver, but a guard. Eat, Bethany snapped, shoving the food tray toward Rosa. I do not have all day. Rosa turned her face away, lips pressed tight. She refused to eat, refused to take her medicine, refused to cooperate with this unfamiliar woman. Inside her, there was only one name, the name she had tried to form all night long. Isla. Where was the girl now? Was she safe? Why had her son driven away the only person who truly loved her? At noon, Dante passed by his mother's room. He stopped when he saw Serena sitting at Rosa's bedside, holding her hand, her voice sweet as honey. "Mother, I am sorry about yesterday. I was so frightened that I overreacted. I promise I will take very good care of you. You are my future mother-in-law." After all, Dante stood in the doorway watching. Serena looked up, met his eyes, and offered the gentlest smile she could manage. She stood, stepped out, and kissed Dante lightly on the cheek. "I am trying to make Mother feel more comfortable," she said, her voice full of concern. "I know she does not like me, but I will not give up." Dante nodded, saying nothing. Serena smiled, then walked down the hallway, her heels tapping out a steady rhythm. He watched her go, then looked back into his mother's room. Rosa lay there with her eyes shut as if she were sleeping. Dante let out a slow breath and turned to leave, and that was when he heard it. A small sound, thin and weak, yet heartbreakingly clear. "Isla." Dante froze. He spun back, staring into the room. His mother was still lying there, her eyes still closed, but her lips were moving, struggling to shape the sound. "Isla." It was the first word Rosa had managed to say since the stroke 3 months ago, and the name she called was not Dante, not Serena. It was Isla, the girl he had driven away. Dante's heart felt like it was being crushed in a fist. Why? Why was the first word his mother fought to speak the name of the person he had accused? Why was she not calling him, but calling her? The questions tore through Dante like a storm, and the seed of doubt he had planted the night before was beginning to sprout. Rosa had finally found her voice, and she was calling the name of the woman Dante had thrown out. 3 days passed, 3 days of Dante watching Serena from a distance, tracking every gesture, every glance, every word that left her mouth. 3 days of him going up to his mother's room each night, watching her sleep, watching the bruise on her wrist slowly shift from purple to yellow. 3 days of him waiting for Marco to finish the assignment. And today, Marco came. The loyal man stepped into Dante's office, a thick file in his hand. He set it on the desk without a word and simply stood there, waiting. Dante looked at the file, then at Marco. "Is this everything?" Marco nodded. "Everything I could find about Ella Navarro, boss, and a few other things I think you should know." Dante opened the file and began to read. "Is Ella Navarro born in 997 in the Bronx, New York? Mother, Maria Navarro, Puerto Rican, worked cleaning houses. Father unknown." And then the next line made Dante stop. "Maria Navarro died in 2005, caused traumatic brain injury due to domestic violence. Perpetrator Richard Cole, stepfather, Isa Navarro, 8 years old at the time, was the only witness." Dante felt his throat tighten as if the air had turned thick and heavy. He kept reading. "After her mother's death, Isla was placed into the foster care system. The child lived with 7 different families over the next 10 years. In the records of one of those homes, there was a note about Isla being disciplined excessively, a gentle phrase for abuse, but the girl did not break. Isla studied on her own at night, worked part-time during the day. At 18, she aged out of foster care and began an independent life. At 22, she earned her nursing degree, and from there she began working at the Street Mary nursing home." Dante turned to the next page. Isla's work record at Street Mary's over 5 years. Not a single complaint, not one negative report. Instead, there were 8 letters of praise from patients' families. One particular note made Dante slow down and read it again more carefully. In Twu, the family of a patient who passed away offered Isla $10,000 to thank her for caring for their mother in her final days. Isa refused. She said she did not do this job for money, but because she did not want anyone to be alone the way her mother once was. Dante closed the file and sat in silence for a long time. 10,000 for an orphan girl raised in poverty and violence. 10,000 was a fortune, but she refused because she had principles, because she had a heart. Marco spoke, breaking the stillness. "She is clean, boss. Cleaner than anyone I have ever investigated. Not a single dark mark in her past. Just a girl trying to live decently, even though life was never decent to her." Dante said nothing. He only stared at the wall, his thoughts spinning. Marco placed another sheet of paper on the desk. "And this is the information on Miss Castellano." "As you requested," Dante picked it up. It was much thinner than EA's file, but what it contained felt heavier. Over the past 2 years, Serena had fired 3 maids from her household. One of them claimed Serena had hit her, but there was not enough evidence to take it to court. The Castellano family paid a large amount of money to keep that person quiet. There were also rumors about Serena treating badly the people she considered inferior to her, but no one dared to say it out loud, afraid of the Castellano family's power. Dante set the paper down, both hands tightening into fists. He had trusted a woman with a history of striking servants, and he had thrown out a woman who had devoted her life to caring for others. He had chosen wrong, completely wrong. "Where is she?" Dante asked, his voice rough. "Issa, where is she now?" Marco looked at him, a faint sense of relief flickering in his eyes. "Street Mary nursing, home boss. She went back to her old job." Dante stood, walked to the window, and looked out at Chicago's gray sky. He needed to find Isla. He needed to know the truth. But first, he needed proof. Proof that could not be denied of what Serena had done. Dante had finally begun to see who Ella truly was. Would he go looking for her? Street Mary Nursing Home sat in the suburbs of Chicago, an aging building with peeling paint and long corridors that seemed to stretch into nowhere. There were no marble floors, no crystal chandeliers, no million-dollar paintings on the walls. There was only the sharp smell of disinfectant, the steady beep of medical machines and human beings waiting for the last day of their lives. Isla had come back here, the place where she worked for 5 years before she was hired to the Moretti mansion. The work was as punishing as ever. 12-hour shifts pay not even 20 an hour and as many as 15 patients to care for each day. But Isla did not complain. She never had. That afternoon, Issa sat beside the bed of Margaret, an 80-year-old woman with white silver hair and pale blue eyes clouded by age. Margaret had Alzheimer's. She barely remembered anything, not even her own grandchildren. But she liked having her hair brushed, and she liked listening to Isla sing. "Sing that one," Margaret said, her voice trembling. "The one your mother used to sing." Isla smiled gently, even though Margaret was not her mother. Even though she did not even know who Isla was, Isla drew the comb through the woman's fragile hair and began to sing. It was a Spanish lullaby, the song her mother had sung to her every night before she died. Derived. Music. Isla's voice was soft and clear, spreading through the small room. Margaret closed her eyes, a peaceful smile on her lips. And in that moment, Isla did not see Margaret anymore. She saw Rosa. Mrs. Rosa with her kind eyes, her warm smile, the silver bracelet she had given Isla. Mrs. Rosa, the woman Issa had sworn to protect, only to be forced to abandon. Tears rose in Isla's eyes, but she swallowed them down. She could not cry, not in front of a patient. "You sing beautifully." The voice made Isla go still. She knew that voice. She would never forget that voice. She turned her head slowly, and her heart seemed to stop. Dante Moretti stood in the doorway alone. No bodyguards, no gun, none of the usual force that seemed to follow him like a shadow. He wore a simple black coat, his hands in his pockets, his gray eyes on her with a look she could not read. Issa's instincts snapped awake. She stood and moved to place herself between Dante and Margaret, as if he were a threat, as if she would protect this elderly woman at any cost, even though she was only a thin nurse. And he was the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago. "What are you doing here?" Isla asked, her voice calmer than she expected. Dante stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "My mother said your name." Isla said nothing, only watched him. It was the first word she has been able to say since the stroke. Dante went on, his voice low and deliberate. "Why would my mother call your name?" "Because I was the only one protecting her." Issa answered without flinching. Dante took another step closer. "Protecting her from whom?" Isla looked straight into his gray eyes, not blinking, not shaking. "You know from whom. You just do not want to believe it." A heavy silence settled over the room. Dante did not speak, but his jaw was clenched, the muscles in his face tight and rigid. He was fighting with himself. Issa could see that. "Tell me," Dante said at last, his tone almost in order. "Tell me what happened that day." And Issa told him. She told him about hearing the screaming from Rose's room. She told him what she saw when she opened the door. Serena slapping Rose's face, screaming at her, forcing her to sign a stack of papers. She told him how Serena kicked Rosa to the floor when she refused, and she told him how she had thrown herself in using her own body as a shield, taking the kicks, the slaps, the insults Serena hurled at her. She wanted Mrs. Rosa to sign papers transferring the property. Issa, her voice trembling slightly with anger as the memories returned. Mrs. Rosa refused, and Serena punished her for it, right in front of me. Dante stood as still as stone. Not a single muscle in his face moved, but his eyes, those cold gray eyes, were full of a brewing storm. "If you are lying to me," Dante said slowly, each word measured as if he were holding himself back, "I will make sure you never work anywhere again." Asa did not step back. She met his gaze, dark brown eyes lit with pride and integrity. "And if I am telling the truth, then what?" Dante did not answer. He only stood there looking at her for a long moment, then turned and walked out of the room. The door shut behind him. Issa watched him leave and realized something. Dante's footsteps as he went sounded far heavier than they had when he arrived. Dante had heard the truth, but believing it would mean his entire world was a lie. Dante drove back to the Moretti mansion in silence. Gila's words echoed through his mind the entire way, like a song he could not turn off. "You know from whom. You just do not want to believe it." He needed proof. He needed to see it with his own eyes, and he knew where to start. The security control room sat in the basement of the mansion, a small room crowded with monitors and recording equipment. Every corner of the house was watched 24 hours a day, every second, every minute, stored away, or at least it was supposed to be. Dante walked in, and the guard sitting at the console startled to his feet. "Boss, I did not know you were coming down here." "Sit," Dante ordered, his voice cold. "I need to see the footage from my mother's room." That day, the day the nurse was fired, the guard swallowed, his face tightening with sudden tension. He sat down, typed on the keyboard, opened the storage folder, and then he stopped. "Boss, there is a problem." Dante looked at the screen. The folder for that day was empty, not a single file. "Where is the footage?" Dante asked, his voice dangerous. "Deleted, boss." "Who deleted it?" The guard lowered his gaze, unable to meet Dante's eyes. "Miss Castellano, boss. She came down here that very night and told me to delete all the footage from the day. She said there was a technical issue. The image was distorted. It did not need to be saved." Dante stood still, his jaw clenched so hard it felt like his teeth might grind to dust. Serena had deleted the footage that same night before anyone could see it. Why? Why would she delete it if there was nothing to hide? If Isla truly had attacked Rosa the way Serena claimed, the footage would have been perfect proof. Serena should have kept it, shown it to Dante, shown it to the police if necessary. But she deleted it. She deleted the evidence. The doubt inside Dante was no longer doubt. It was becoming something far more terrifying, a certainty taking shape. He left the security room without a word, climbed the stairs, and headed for his mother's room. It was well past midnight, but when Dante pushed open Rosa's door, she was awake. Her eyes were wide in the darkness, fixed on the doorway as if she had been waiting for someone. When she saw her son, Rosa did not speak, only looked at him with an aching gaze, full of words she could not say. Dante walked to the bedside and sat down, gently taking his mother's thin hand. He could feel her trembling, not from cold, but from something deeper. "Mother," Dante said softly, "I need you to tell me the truth. What happened that day? Did Serena do anything to you?" Rosa looked at her son, tears spilling over. She tried to open her mouth, tried to force broken sounds out of her throat. "She hit." Dante felt his heart clamp tight as if a fist had closed around it. His mother was trying to say Serena had hit her. "Mother, I am sorry," Dante whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I did not believe you. I threw out the only person protecting you. I am sorry." Rosa shook her head weakly, and then she did something that startled Dante. She lifted her hand and pointed toward the corner of the room. Behind the old painting on the wall, Dante frowned, not understanding, but Rosa kept pointing, her eyes steady with insistence. He stood, crossed to the corner, and lifted the painting away. And he saw it, a tiny camera hidden so cleverly no one could have found it unless they already knew it was there. Dante turned back to his mother, eyes wide. Mother, you installed this. Rosa nodded slowly, a faint smile flickering across her lips. She had known. She had suspected Serena for a long time, even before the stroke, and she had prepared. Dante called Marco. In less than 15 minutes, Marco was there. He removed the camera, connected it to a laptop, and found the file from that day. Yes, boss, Marco said, his voice trembling slightly with excitement. It is here. It is all here. Dante sat down, staring at the black screen. Marco handed him a small USB drive containing the footage. Dante took it and realized his hand was shaking. This was the moment of truth. This was the moment he would know whether he had been right or wrong. This was the moment he would see the real face of the woman he intended to marry. Play it, Dante ordered, his voice rough. Marco pressed the button. The screen lit up. The secret camera had captured everything, and Dante was about to see the horrific truth. The screen lit up and held open in front of Dante. The image from the hidden camera was sharp down to every detail. Rose's bedroom, afternoon light spilling through the window, and Serena Castellanos standing in the middle of the room, her face twisted with rage. Nothing like the gentle, sweet woman Dante thought he knew. Sign here, you senile old hag. Serena's voice in the video rang out, sharp as a blade. Sign or I will turn your life into hell. Rosa sat on the bed, shaking her head weakly, her lips moving as she tried to say something, but no sound came. She was fighting back, refusing. Even though her body was frail and her voice had been stolen by the stroke, and then Serena slapped her. Serena's hand swung up and crashed down across Rose's cheek with terrifying force. The 75-year-old woman's head snapped to the side, a cry of pain tearing out of her throat. Dante felt his blood boil, but the video kept going and it grew worse. Who do you think you are? Serena screamed, grabbing the collar of Rose's nightgown and yanking her forward. You think you can stop me? I am going to be the mistress of this house. And you? You will die in some rotten nursing home that no one even remembers. She shoved Rosa. The old weakened woman fell to the floor. The sound of impact sharp enough to hurt. Serena laughed, standing over her like a victor over the defeated. And then the door flew open. Issa ran in, her eyes wide with horror at what she saw. She did not hesitate, did not think. She rushed straight to Rosa, dropped to her knees and used her own body to shield her. Do not touch her, Ella shouted, her voice shaking but full of resolve. Serena spun around, her eyes blazing. You dare interfere in my business, you cheap Puerto Rican trash. She lunged and kicked Isla in the side. One kick, two kicks, three kicks. Isla folded with pain, but she did not let go of Rosa. She wrapped herself around the older woman, letting her own back take every blow. Serena snatched up the crystal vase from the table and hurled it at them. It shattered against the wall, fragments exploding outward. Let her go, Serena screamed. Let go now. But Ella did not let go. She only held Rosa tighter, whispering reassurance into her ear. I am here. I will not let anyone hurt you. Breathe, just breathe. And then in the video, footsteps sounded from the hallway. Dante's footsteps. Serena heard them, and in a single instant, her face changed completely. The viciousness vanished, replaced by fear, worry, tears spilling as if someone had flipped a switch. She stepped back, clutched her own elbow as if she were injured. And when Dante appeared in the doorway, she had fully transformed into a victim. Dante, I tried to stop her, but she pushed your mother. The video ended. The screen went dark. The room sank into a heavy silence. Dante sat unmoving, his face white as a corpse. He said nothing, did not breathe, did not move. Marco stood beside him, not daring to speak. Rosa lay on the bed, tears slipping quietly down her wrinkled cheeks. She had waited for this moment, the moment her son would see the truth. 1 minute passed, two, then Dante stood slowly, like a beast waking up. And then he exploded. He flung the laptop off the table, and it slammed into the wall with a brutal, ears-splitting crash. He swept his arm across the shelves, knocking everything down. Books, decorations, all of it clattering onto the floor. He punched the wall once, twice, 3 times until blood began to seep from his knuckles. I threw her out, Dante roared, his voice raw with a pain that sounded like someone was ripping his insides apart. I threw out the only person protecting my mother. I believed the one who was hurting her. He dropped to his knees, both hands clutching his head. Dante Moretti, the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago, the man the entire underworld feared, was on his knees in the wreckage, his shoulders shaking in uneven waves. Marco stepped forward and laid a hand on his shoulder without a word. There were moments when silence was the only thing that could be done. Rosa watched her son, her heart aching. She wanted to reach out, wanted to hold him, wanted to say she forgave him. But she knew Dante needed this moment. He needed to face his mistake before he could fix it. At last, Dante rose. He drew in a deep breath, dragged a hand down his face, and when he turned to Marco, the gray in his eyes was no longer pain. It was cold, dangerous, the look of a mafia boss about to deliver judgment. "Prepare for tomorrow night," Dante said, his calmness frightening. "Arrange a dinner. Invite Don Castellano and his family. Tell them it is a party to announce the wedding date." Marco nodded understanding. "And contact Father Antonio. I need him there as a witness." "Yes, boss." Dante looked toward his mother, his eyes softening for a heartbeat. "I will fix everything, mother, I swear." Rosa nodded, a faint smile on her lips. For the first time in weeks, she saw hope. Dante finally knew it all, and the mafia boss was about to carry out his judgment. The following night, the Moretti mansion blazed with light, as if it were welcoming a grand celebration. The main dining room had been dressed in lavish splendor with red roses, shimmering white candles, and the most precious silver dinner service the family owned. Servants moved in a hurry, the private chef preparing the most expensive traditional Italian dishes. Everything was perfect, perfect in a way that felt frightening. Serena Castellano came down the staircase in a brilliant red dress that hugged her body, showcasing every seductive curve. She had spent the entire day at the spa, getting her hair done, her makeup perfected, preparing for the moment she believed would be the most glorious night of her life, the night Dante would announce the wedding date in front of both families, the night she would officially become the future Mrs. Moretti. "You look stunning," Dante said as she reached him, his tone as calm as ever. Serena beamed and kissed his cheek. "Of course, this is our special night." She did not notice that Dante's eyes on her were colder than usual. She was too busy admiring the splendor around her to realize she was walking into a trap. The guests arrived one by one. Don Castellano, Serena's father, a 60-year-old man with salt and pepper hair and the sharp eyes of a seasoned mafia boss. Beside him was Vincent, Serena's brother, a 35-year-old man with a cold, quiet presence. They entered the mansion with the posture of honored guests, unaware they were stepping into a trial. "Dante, you have gone all out," Don Castellano said, gripping Dante's hand in a firm shake. "I am guessing this is a special occasion." "Very special," Dante replied, a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I have something important to share with everyone." Serena linked her arm through her father's and led him into the dining room, laughing and speaking brightly. She was at the peak of happiness, and she did not know it was the last moment of that happiness. Rosa was brought down in a wheelchair, Bethany pushing her into the dining room. But tonight there was something different in the old woman's eyes. No fear, no despair. Instead, her gaze glittered as she looked at her son, as if she knew something the others did not. Serena glanced at Rosa, her lips curving into a practiced false smile. "Mother, you look better. I hope you will enjoy dinner tonight." Rosa did not answer, only looked at Serena with a gaze that if Serena had been smart enough, she would have recognized as the gaze of someone who already knew the ending. And then another guest appeared. Father Antonio, the elderly priest from the church the Moretti family had been tied to for generations. He walked into the dining room in his traditional black robe, his face kind yet stern. Serena frowned in surprise. "Father Antonio, I did not know you were invited." "I invited Father as a witness," Dante said gently, "for an important event." Serena nodded without suspicion. She thought Dante wanted Father Antonio to witness the wedding date announcement, perhaps to discuss a church ceremony. She could not imagine the horrific truth waiting for her. Dinner began. The appetizers were served, wine was poured into full glasses. Everyone talked and laughed, the atmosphere seeming warm and cheerful. Serena spoke without stopping about wedding plans, about the bridal gown she had ordered from Paris, about the endless guest list, about the grand ceremony she had dreamed of. "I want it at St. Patrick's," Serena said, her eyes shining. "It is the most beautiful church in Chicago, and the reception will be at the Peninsula Hotel. I have already put down a deposit. She turned to Dante, waiting for his agreement, but Dante said nothing. Throughout the meal, he barely opened his mouth. He only sat there, gray eyes never leaving Serena, watching every movement, every expression. That gaze was cold, distant, as if he were looking at a stranger. Don Castellano noticed Dante's unusual silence. He set his wine glass down and studied his future son-in-law with curiosity. You have been quiet all night, Dante. Is something on your mind? Dante placed his napkin on the table slowly, deliberately. Then he stood. Every eye in the room turned toward him. Actually, yes, Dante said, his calm almost unnatural. I have something I want everyone to see. He signaled Marco, who stood in the corner of the room. Marco nodded, walked to the wall, and pressed a control button. A large screen slowly lowered from the ceiling, covering the far wall. It was a projection screen Dante had installed earlier that day. Serena looked at it, curious. What surprise are you preparing for me, Dante? She asked, her voice bright with excitement. Is it a video of our trip to Europe, or is it... Dante did not answer. He only looked at her, and in that moment, Serena caught his eyes. Something in that look made the smile on her lips falter. Something cold and dangerous, like the gaze of a predator about to strike. Marco pressed play. The large screen lit up, and Serena's smile froze as she realized it was not a sentimental montage. It was footage from Rose's bedroom. The trap had been set. Serena was about to face her judgment in front of everyone. The video began to play, and the luxurious dining room suddenly became a courtroom. On the large screen, Serena Castellano appeared, her face twisted with fury, completely different from the elegant, glittering woman seated at the table. Sign here, you senile old hag. Sign or I will turn your life into hell. Serena's voice in the video rang out, icy and ruthless. Everyone in the room turned to the screen, then to Serena, then back to the screen again, as if their eyes were betraying them. Don Castellano set his wine glass down, his gaze locked on the image of his daughter slapping the face of a 75-year-old woman. Vincent, Serena's brother, sat like stone, his face unreadable, but his hand tightened into a fist beneath the table. Father Antonio quietly made the sign of the cross, his aged eyes filled with pain as he witnessed the cruelty on the screen. The video continued. Rosa was shoved to the floor. Isla rushed in to protect her. Serena kicked Isla, struck her, hurled objects at them. And then came the most terrifying moment, the sound of Dante's footsteps from the hallway. And Serena in the video changed instantly. In a heartbeat, she turned from a devil into a helpless victim. Tears pouring out, her voice trembling, blaming Isla with a perfection that was chilling. The dining room fell into absolute silence. Not a sound, not a breath, only the video running and the truth laying itself bare. Serena sat there, her face white as a corpse, her eyes wide with horror as she watched herself on the screen. Then she sprang up, shoving her chair backward with a harsh, grating screech. That is fake! Serena screamed, her voice shrill. Someone edited the video. This is a conspiracy to frame me. Dante, you have to believe me. I would never do things like that. She turned to Dante, eyes swimming with tears, reaching out as if to grab him. But Dante did not move. He only stood there, gray eyes cold as ice, looking at her with undisguised contempt. Fake? Dante asked, his calm frightening. Then why did you delete the footage from the mansion security system that very night? If you were innocent, you would have kept it as evidence against Ihela. Serena stammered, unable to find words. She turned to her father, her gaze pleading. Father, you have to believe me. This is the Moretti family's plot to break our alliance. I did not. Be quiet. Don Castellano cut her off, his voice cold and heavy with disdain. He looked at his daughter with an expression Serena had never seen before. Not love, not indulgence, only disgust. You have disgraced the Castellano family, Don Castellano said slowly. You beat a 75-year-old woman. You framed an innocent person, and you dared to think you could hide all of it. Serena shook her head, tears spilling, but no one believed those tears anymore. They had seen her cry on the screen. They knew she could turn it on like a switch. And then from the other side of the table, a weak but unmistakably clear voice rose. It is all true. It is all true. Everyone turned to Rosa. The old woman sat in her wheelchair, back straight, eyes bright, and for the first time since the stroke, she spoke a complete sentence. She hit me. Isa protected me. It is all true. Serena looked at Rosa, then at Dante, then at her father. She realized there was no escape. The perfect mask she had worn for so many years shattered into 1,000 pieces, and with nothing left to lose, her true nature showed itself. "You can't do this to me," Serena screamed, her voice no longer sweet, but wild with madness. "You can't. The alliance between the two families. Father will not allow it. Father will." "I told you to be quiet," Don Castellano roared. "You no longer have the right to speak in the name of the Castellano family." Serena stood there trembling, eyes bloodshot, breathing fast and shallow. She looked around the room, searching for an ally, someone to stand on her side. But there was no one. Even her brother turned his face away. As if he could not bear to look at her, Dante walked towards Serena, each step heavy as the beat of a fatal drum. He stopped in front of her and looked down with the kind of gaze she had only ever seen him give to enemies. "The engagement ends here," Dante said, his voice cold as ice. "You will leave Chicago tonight. If I ever see your face again, I will not be this polite." Serena stumbled back one step, then another. Her eyes darted around the room like an animal trapped with nowhere to run. Then her gaze stopped on Rosa. The old woman sat there frail, unguarded. The one who had made everything collapse. The one who had refused to sign those papers. The one who had destroyed Serena's future. What happened next moved so fast no one could react. Serena snatched the silver knife from the dinner table and lunged straight at Rosa with a crazed scream. "If I can't have this family, no one will." Serena had lost everything, and now she was ready to kill. But Dante was faster. The instincts of a mafia boss forged through decades in the underworld, fired in a single instant. He lunged forward and stopped Serena before she could get anywhere near Rosa. His hand clamped around her wrist, twisted hard, and the silver knife clattered to the floor. Serena screamed in pain, but Dante did not let go. He stared at her with the look he reserved for traitors, for the people he had ordered dealt with in Chicago's dark alleys. "You think you can lay a hand on my mother?" Dante hissed through his teeth, his voice as dangerous as a snake. "You think you can come here, beat her, and walk away?" Dante's guards appeared as if from nowhere. Two large men grabbed Serena and hauled her away from Dante. She fought. She screamed, but she could not break their grip. Let me go right now," Serena shrieked like a mad woman. Her carefully styled hair was now wild, her expensive makeup smeared by tears and sweat. She was no longer the proud Castellano princess. She was only a frantic, raging woman being dragged out like a criminal. "You will regret this, Dante Moretti," Serena screamed back as they pulled her out of the dining room. "I will destroy everything you love. I will make you pay. Do you hear me? You will regret it." Her screams echoed down the hallway, then faded, then vanished as the door closed. The dining room sank into a heavy silence. Don Castellano sat motionless, his face like stone, but Dante could see humiliation burning in his eyes. He was one of the most powerful bosses in Chicago, and his daughter had just performed a mad, disgraceful spectacle in front of everyone. Slowly, Don Castellano stood. He stepped up to Dante and did something no one expected. He bowed his head. "I am sorry about my daughter," Don Castellano said, his voice low and heavy. "She will be dealt with. I will make sure she never bothers your family again. As for our alliance," Dante lifted a hand, cutting him off. "Alliance?" he asked, his voice cold. "After what your family has done to my family, you would still want to talk about an alliance?" Don Castellano raised his head, his gaze sharpening. This was an insult. Rejecting an alliance with the Castellano family was a declaration of war in the Mafia world. But Dante did not care. "Your daughter beat my mother," Dante continued, each word dropping like cold stone. "She tormented a 75-year-old woman recovering from a stroke. She framed an innocent person. And she just tried to kill my mother right in front of me. You think I will be allies with a family like that?" Silence. Don Castellano stared at Dante. And in that moment, the power between them shifted. Dante was no longer the future son-in-law who needed the Castellano family support. He was Dante Moretti, the boss of the Moretti family, the man who had publicly rejected and humiliated the Castellano family in front of witnesses. I understand, Don Castellano said at last, his voice hard as iron. We have nothing more to say to each other. He turned to Vincent and signaled his son. Father and son walked out of the dining room, their backs straight, but their steps heavy. They had arrived as honored guests. They left as defeated men. Father Antonio rose, walked over to Dante and placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, he said gently. The truth must be brought into the light, no matter how much it hurts. Dante nodded but said nothing. The old priest greeted Rosa and quietly left. Leaving mother and son in the shattered dining room, Dante walked to his mother and dropped to his knees beside her wheelchair. He took her thin hand, and for the first time in many years, he felt his eyes burn. I'm sorry, mother, he whispered. I did not protect you. I trusted the wrong person. Rosa looked at her son, her aged eyes full of love and forgiveness. She lifted her hand and stroked his cheek the way she had when he was a boy. Then she spoke slowly but more clearly than ever. Find her. Bring her home. Dante knew exactly who she meant. Isla, the girl he had thrown out. The girl who had protected his mother when he could not. The girl he owed an apology that would never be enough. I will find her mother, Dante said. I promise. Serena was gone. But could Dante repair what he had destroyed? 3 days passed since that fateful night. 3 days of Dante putting everything in order within the family, making sure Serena was sent far away under strict supervision, and preparing for the meeting he knew would be the hardest meeting of his life. On the morning of the 4th day, Dante drove to street, Mary nursing home alone. No bodyguards, no escort cars, no sign of power at all. Just him in a simple white shirt and black slacks, walking into the old building like an ordinary man. The receptionist looked at him with curiosity, but did not ask questions, only pointed toward the garden out back when he said he was looking for Isa Navarro. Dante stepped into the garden where rose bushes were blooming beneath the afternoon sun, and he saw her. Isla sat on a wooden bench with Margaret in a wheelchair beside her. She was reading aloud to the old woman, her voice gentle and warm, pausing now and then to explain a passage or laugh at a humorous detail. Her black hair fell loose over her shoulders, the sunlight catching it, highlighting her honey-brown skin and bright eyes. She looked peaceful. She looked beautiful. She looked like an angel in a garden full of flowers. Dante stood there watching from a distance, and his heart tightened with pain. He had thrown this woman out. He had not believed her. He had chosen a venomous snake instead of an angel. Isla lifted her head and her eyes met Dante's. In that instant, time seemed to stop. She blinked as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Then she stood, instinct making her step back. 1 step, then 2. Her gaze was guarded, defensive, like a deer facing a hunter. Miss Isa, Dante said, his voice rough. I need to speak with you. Isla did not answer. She only stood there, one hand resting on the back of Margaret's wheelchair, as if she were ready to protect the old woman at any moment. Dante walked closer, and then he did something no one could have imagined. Dante Moretti, the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago, the man the entire underworld feared, slowly sank to his knees in front of Ella Navarro in the middle of the flowered garden. His knees touched the ground, his arms hung at his sides, and he lifted his head to look at her, eyes filled with pain and regret. I was wrong, Dante said, each word heavy as stone. I did not listen to you. I believed the person who harmed my mother instead of the person who protected her. I do not deserve forgiveness, but I still have to ask. Isa stood frozen, eyes wide. She had prepared herself for many things when she saw Dante. Anger, threats, even violence. But she had not prepared for this. Not for the sight of a mafia boss kneeling before her like a sinner before judgment. Do you know what hurt me the most? Isa finally spoke, her voice trembling, faintly, not being fired. It was every night I thought about Mrs. Rosa, terrified, not knowing whether she was safe. I lay awake all night, imagining every horrible thing that could happen to her. And I could do nothing because you threw me out. Dante closed his eyes, swallowed the tight knot in his throat. I know, and I can't describe how much I regret it. You have every right to hate me, he went on, opening his eyes, meeting hers. You have every right to never forgive me. I will accept whatever you decide. Isla looked at the man kneeling in front of her. In his gray eyes, she no longer saw the cold arrogance from the first day they met. She saw pain, remorse, and something that looked like desperation. I do not hate you, Ella said after a long silence. I am disappointed. Power blinded you. You looked, but you did not see. You heard, but you did not understand. You let money and status decide who was trustworthy and who was not. Dante did not argue. Every word cut into him like a blade. But he knew she was right. He had let power cloud his vision. He had let political alliances matter more than the truth. My mother wants to see you, Dante said. She asks about you every day. The first word she spoke after the stroke was your name. Isla felt her eyes burn. Moose Rosa, the woman she had loved like her own mother. Is she well? She asked, her voice thick. She is recovering, but she needs you. Dante drew a deep breath. I came here to invite you back, not as an employee, as an honored guest of the Moretti family. You will have your own room, everything you need, and if one day you want to leave, I will not stop you. Isla looked at him, then looked toward Margaret, dozing in her wheelchair. The old woman was like Rosa, lonely and in need of care. But Rosa was different. She was the first person who had seen Isla's worth when no one else had. I will come back, Isa said at last. Dante lifted his head, hope flashing through his eyes. But not because of you, Isla continued, her tone firm, because of Mrs. Rosa. Dante nodded and slowly stood. For the first time, something in his gaze was different. Not power, not control, only the purest gratitude. Thank you, he said, and those two words carried more weight than any speech. The Mafia boss had knelt before a nurse, and she had agreed to return. The next day, Dante's car pulled up to the gate of the Moretti mansion, and Isa stepped out with a small bag over her shoulder. She stood there for a moment, looking up at the grand estate she had been thrown out of less than 2 weeks ago. The last time she left, the rain had poured down in sheets, and her heart had shattered. This time, the late afternoon sun poured gold over everything, and inside her was a strange feeling she could not name. The front doors opened, and Marco Vital came out to greet her. Dante's right hand stopped in front of Isla, then did something that surprised her. He bowed his head, a gesture of respect usually reserved for honored guests, not for a servant. Welcome back, Miss Navarro, Marco said, his voice sincere. We owe you an apology. I owe you an apology. I saw something that day, but I did not speak loudly enough. I let you take the blame. Isla looked at Marco, then gave a small nod. You tried. I know you did. They stepped inside, and Isa realized the mansion had changed. The air was no longer tense and suffocating the way it had been before. Light spilled in through the tall glass windows. Fresh flowers sat in crystal vases, and the servants moved with faces that looked more at ease, as if a dark cloud had been lifted from this house. Dante walked behind them, keeping his distance, saying nothing. He no longer moved with the arrogance of a master. He walked like a man trying to make amends, careful and humble. They reached Rosa's room, the door opened, and Isa saw Rosa sitting on the bed, her eyes fixed on the doorway, as if she had been waiting for this moment for days. When Rosa saw Ela, the old woman's eyes lit up as if someone had just struck a match in the dark. Her lips trembled, tears spilled over, and she reached both hands forward. My girl, you came back, Rosa said, her voice broken, yet overflowing with love. Isla could not hold herself together anymore. She ran to the bedside, dropped to her knees, and wrapped her arms around Rosa. The old woman held her tightly and would not let go, as if she feared that if she released her, Isla would disappear again. I'm sorry, Isla whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry I was not here. I'm sorry I left you alone. Rosa shook her head, her hand stroking Isa's hair the way a mother soothes her child. Not your fault, never your fault. Dante stood in the doorway watching the scene. His face was complicated, full of guilt and regret. He had nearly made his mother lose the person she loved most. He had nearly destroyed everything because of his own blindness. After Rosa calmed down, Marco led Isla to her room, not the small room in the servants' wing like before. This was a spacious guest room on the second floor near Rosa's room, with large windows overlooking the garden. a king-size bed, and a private bathroom. "This is your room from now on," Marco said. "The boss asked us to prepare everything you need. If you need anything else, just tell me." Issa looked around the room, feeling unsettled. She was not used to being treated this way. She was a nurse, a caregiver, not an honored guest, but she understood this was Dante's way of trying to make amends. "Thank you," she said softly. That evening, as Isla was arranging her things, her phone buzzed. A message from a familiar number, the same number that had sent her the mysterious text on the night she was fired. "I am glad you came back. Rosa needs you, Father Antonio." Issa stared at the message, and suddenly everything became clear. Father Antonio, the elderly priest Rosa trusted completely. He had known the truth from the beginning. He had sent Issa words of strength when she was at her most desperate. He had been the witness on the night Serena was exposed. Isla smiled and sent back a short reply. "Thank you, Father, for everything." That night, after making sure Rosa had taken her medicine and was resting, Isla stood by the window of her room and looked out at the garden, flooded with moonlight. From Rosa's room came the steady sound of peaceful breathing. This was the first good sleep Rosa had had in weeks. No nightmares, no fear, no Serena. "Maybe," Isla whispered to herself. "The storm is finally passing." Isla was home again, but the true journey of healing had only just begun. 2 months passed like a peaceful dream. The Moretti Mansion, a place that had once held so many dark secrets and so much pain, now overflowed with laughter and light. Every morning Ella woke early, prepared a light breakfast for Rosa, then helped her through physical therapy in the garden. They began with small steps, Rosa gripping Ella's hand, her legs trembling on the grass. Then slowly, day by day, she grew stronger. From needing to lean completely on Isla, she had come to walk with a cane. From broken, hard to understand sounds, she had come to speak full sentences. Even if they were still slow, and most importantly, her smile had returned. There was no longer fear hiding behind her eyes. No more sleepless nights from nightmares. Rosa was coming back to life, and Isla was the one who had brought life back to her. Dante changed too. He began staying home more, handing most of the family's work over to Marco. Late-night meetings, secret trips, tense phone calls became fewer and fewer. Instead, he spent time with his mother, sitting in her room for hours, reading aloud to her, or simply being there beside her. But Marco noticed something else. Whenever Dante sat in Rosa's room, his gaze did not stop with his mother. It often followed Ila, watching the way she gently brushed Rosa's hair, the way she patiently repeated a word again and again to help her practice speaking, the way she laughed when Rosa told a funny story from the past. Dante grew curious about her. He wanted to know what she read on late nights. He wanted to know what food she liked. He wanted to know what she dreamed of when she closed her eyes. But he did not ask. He only watched quietly like a man trying to solve a mystery he was afraid to touch. Their conversations began with short, cautious lines. "Do you need anything? How is my mother today?" Then little by little they grew longer. They spoke about the weather, about the garden, about the books on the shelves. Isla still kept her distance, but she was no longer cold the way she had been in the beginning. She began to see a different Dante, not the arrogant, icy mafia boss, a man trying to become a better version of himself. One morning, as Isla stood on the second-floor balcony watching the sunrise, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Dante standing there with 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering her 1 cup. Isla took it, the warmth spreading through her palm. "Thank you." They stood side by side in silence, watching the sun rise slowly over the horizon, turning the Chicago sky to gold. No one spoke. No one needed to. Only 2 people standing together, sharing a moment of peace in a life full of storms. And that moment, brief as it was, planted a seed in both of them, a seed they had not yet dared to name. That afternoon, when Isa went out to buy medicine for Rosa, the old woman called Dante to her bedside. He sat down, took his mother's hand, and waited. Rosa looked at her son with the clear, knowing eyes of someone who had lived long enough to understand these things. "I see the way you look at her," Rosa said, her voice slow but steady. "Do not be afraid, my son. She is worthy of you." Dante was silent, not denying it, because he knew his mother was right. because he could not hide what his heart shouted every time he looked at Isla. "But I heard her," Dante whispered. "I do not know if she will ever." Rosa squeezed her son's hand. "Time will answer, but you must be brave. True love asks for courage, my son." Dante nodded, and inside him, the small flame he had tried to extinguish suddenly surged brighter than ever. Feelings were growing, but would Dante have the courage to speak them aloud? That night, Dante could not sleep. He wandered through the mansion, his footsteps aimless, until they carried him to the window overlooking the garden. Moonlight flooded the world outside, laying a shimmering silver veil over the rose bushes. And in that dim, enchanted light, he saw a figure sitting on the stone bench beneath the magnolia tree. Issa. He meant to turn away to give her space, but then he noticed her shoulders trembling. She was crying. Dante did not think. He stepped out of the mansion, crossed the garden, and went to her. When he drew near, Isla lifted her head and hurriedly wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Mr. Moretti, I am sorry. I did not know." "Do not apologize," Dante said gently, sitting beside her on the stone bench. "You have the right to crime." Isla turned her face away, trying to hide her reddened eyes, but the tears kept coming, no matter how hard she fought to hold them back. "What day is it today?" Dante asked, his voice low and soft. Issa was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, her voice breaking, "The anniversary of my mother's death 20 years ago." Dante said nothing, only waited. And Issa, perhaps because the darkness hid her face, perhaps because his silence made her feel safe, began to tell him, "My stepfather beat my mother to death when I was 8. She said, her tone flat, as if she were speaking about someone else. "I was there. I saw everything. I screamed. I begged him to stop, but he did not. And when the police came, when I told them what I saw, no one believed me." She paused, drawing a trembling breath. "They said I made it up. They said children are not reliable. My stepfather was released because there was not enough evidence. Not until 2 years later, when he beat another woman nearly to death, did they arrest him. Like Rosa," Dante said, his voice catching. "No one believed her." Isla nodded, tears running down her cheeks. "That is why I could not abandon her. When I saw Serena hitting her, I saw my mother. I saw myself, an 8-year-old child who could not save her mother." She went on to speak of her years in the foster care system. 7 different families in 10 years, some kind, but others who treated her like a servant, who beat her for the smallest mistakes. She spoke of nights so hungry she felt faint because she had been punished and denied food. Of the scars on her back she still hid beneath her clothes. Of how she studied each night beneath streetlights because the family would not let her turn on the light in her room. Dante listened in silence, each word cutting into him like a knife. She had lived through hell, and she had still grown into someone decent, compassionate, willing to protect others even at the cost of herself. When Isla fell quiet, Dante did something he had never done with anyone. He opened himself. "My father was killed when I was 20, Dante said, his voice low and far away. "He was betrayed by the person he trusted most. A partner, a best friend, a man he treated like a brother. That man stabbed him from behind, literally. He looked up into the night sky, stars glittering like a million eyes watching from above. I had to carry the family before I was grown. I had to become cold, ruthless, unable to trust anyone because, in my world, trusting the wrong person means death." He turned to Issa. "I built walls around myself because I was afraid. Afraid of trusting the wrong person. Afraid of being betrayed like my father." And then he stopped, bitterness threading his voice. "And then I believed Serena instead of believing you. I let fear make me blind." Silence settled over them, 2 people sitting together in the dark, each carrying their own scars. "We both have scars," Issa finally said, her voice as light as wind. "The difference is how we choose to carry them." Dante looked at her, his gray eyes deep. "You carry yours with dignity. I carry mine with walls." "Walls can be torn down," Isla said, "if you want them to be." Dante did not answer with words. Instead, he reached out and touched Ella's hand, where it rested on her lap. She did not pull away. He took her hand gently, as if he were holding the most precious thing in the world. And they sat there, their fingers woven together, Looking up at the star-filled psalm, no one said another word. No one needed to, because in that moment, two broken souls found comfort in each other. Two broken people were finding peace together, but danger was still lurking in the dark. 1 week after that night, beneath the magnolia tree, everything changed. That morning, Illa woke and realized something was different. The number of guards in the mansion had doubled. Men with faces hard as money stood in every corner, their eyes constantly sweeping the space as if hunting an invisible enemy. The main gate was locked 24 hours a day, and no one was allowed in or out without Marco's permission. Isla could feel the tension wrapped around the house. Dante, the man she had begun to see as having a gentleness beneath his cold exterior, suddenly returned to a face like stone and eyes full of worry. He kept holding private meetings with Marco, late-night phone calls that lasted for hours, and every time Ella walked into a room, the conversation stopped instantly. She was not easily fooled. She knew something was happening, and she decided to find the truth. That night, when Dante was standing alone in his office, Isla walked in without knocking. He turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he smoothed it back into calm. "Isa, is something wrong?" "I want to ask you that," Isla replied, her voice firm. "What is happening? Why are there twice as many guards? Why are you so tense? Why does everyone look at me as if I could disappear at any moment?" Dante was silent for a long time. Then he sighed, went to his desk, picked up an iPad, and handed it to her. "Watch." Isla took it, and her blood seemed to freeze when she saw the video playing. Serena, her blonde hair wild, her eyes crazed, her face gaunt as if she had not slept in days. She was filming herself in a dark room, her shrill voice blasting through the speaker. "Dante Moretti, you think you can lock me away forever? You think you can ruin my life and then live happily with that Puerto Rican? I will come back. I will take back everything that belongs to me, and I will make you pay. You and that. Wait for me." The video ended. Issa set the iPad down, her hands trembling. When did she escape? 3 days ago, Dante answered, his voice heavy. Where her father sent her was not a prison, only a high-end rehab facility in the suburbs. She bribed the staff and ran. "We are searching, but we have nothing yet. So she is out there free and she wants revenge." Dante stepped closer, gray eyes fixed on Isla with worry. "She is coming for you, Isla, not me, not my mother. You in her mind, you are the one who stole everything." "So she is coming to find us?" Isla asked, her voice calmer than she expected. "She is coming to find you," Dante said, both hands closing around Ella's shoulders. "And I will not let that happen. I will find her before she can do anything. But until then, I need you to be careful. Do not leave the mansion alone. Do not go anywhere without guards." Isa looked at him, then shook her head slightly. "I am not running, Mr. Moretti. Not this time. Not when Mrs. Rosa needs me. Asa, I have been running my whole life." She cut in, her voice firm, her eyes shining with determination. "Running from my past, running from pain, running from the people who hurt me. But this time I have something worth staying for. Mrs. Rosa and I will not abandon her." Dante looked at her, and something in his eyes changed. Admiration, respect, and something deeper he still had not dared to name. "All right," he said at last, "but you promise me. No recklessness. Do not face her alone." "Let me handle it," Issa nodded. "I promise." That night, as Isla was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it, and her blood turned cold. "You think you won? The game is not over, Puerto Rican. I am coming to take back everything you stole from me. Wait for me." Issa stared at the message, her hand tightening around the phone. Outside the window, the darkness of Chicago stretched on without end. And somewhere in that darkness, Serena was waiting. Serena was back, and she was hungry for blood. 2 weeks passed in tension, even with guards posted everywhere, and Serena's shadow still lurking somewhere out there. Life inside the Moretti mansion went on. Issa did not let fear rule her. She still cared for Rosa every day, still laughed with her, still helped her practice walking and speaking. And Rosa, as if strengthened by Isla's love, recovered with astonishing speed. She could walk without a cane, speak almost normally, and her eyes always sparkled with joy, whenever she saw Isla and Dante together. Today was her birthday, 76 years old, and Dante decided to host a small party in the garden. Not a grand affair with hundreds of guests like years before, just a warm evening with the people closest to her, Rosa, Isa, Marco, Father Antonio, and a few servants who had been with the family for many years. The garden was decorated with hundreds of tiny lights, glittering like stars among the leaves beneath the magnolia tree, where Dante and Ila had held hands for the first time. A round table was set beautifully with fresh flowers and white candles. Soft classical music drifted from speakers hidden in the shrubs, creating an atmosphere that felt romantic and peaceful. Rosa sat at the center, her face glowing with happiness. She looked at her son standing beside Isla and her heart filled with joy. This was all she had ever wanted, not money, not power, only to see her son happy. After dinner, when the birthday cake had been cut and the wishes had been spoken, Dante stood. He walked to Isla and held out his hand. "Would you dance with me?" Isa looked at him, surprised. "I do not know how to waltz." "I will teach you," Dante said, a faint smile touching his mouth. "For my mother. She likes seeing us happy." Isla glanced at Rosa and saw her nodding encouragement, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Isla could not refuse. She placed her hand in Dante's and he led her into the center of the garden, right beneath the magnolia tree. One of his hands settled at her waist, the other held hers, and they began to move with the music. At first, Ella was stiff, her steps clumsy, but Dante guided her with patient steadiness. Slowly she relaxed, letting him lead her through a gentle dance beneath the shimmering lights. They turned, they stepped, they moved together as if they had danced like this 1,000 times. As the piece neared its end, Dante stopped. He looked into Isla's eyes, gray and deep as an ocean at night. "You saved my mother," he said, his voice low and sincere. "You changed this house. You changed me." Isa shook her head slightly. "I did nothing special. I only did the right thing." Dante lifted his hand and gently brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. "In my world, doing the right thing is the most special thing of all." Then under the glittering lights, beneath the pure white magnolia blossoms, Dante Moretti bent down and kissed Ila Navarro. Their first kiss, soft, tender, like a promise that did not need words. Isla closed her eyes and let the feeling carry her. His mouth was warm, gentle, and in that moment she forgot everything. She forgot the painful past, forgot the threat of Serena, forgot that his world and hers were separated by an ocean of difference. There were only the two of them beneath the magnolia tree and a kiss that could change everything. From a distance, Rosa watched them, happy tears slipping quietly down her wrinkled cheeks. She lifted a hand to her chest, feeling her heart beating fast. At last, her son had found someone worthy, but no one saw the figure hiding in the darkness beyond the mansion's fence. A woman with wild blonde hair, eyes burning with hatred. Serena Castellano stood there, a phone in her hand, capturing the moment Dante and Isa kissed, her lips curled into a venomous smile. "All right," she whispered in the dark. "Enjoy it, because this will be the last time you are happy." They had finally kissed, but someone was watching from the shadows. 2 o'clock in the morning, the Moretti mansion lay sunk in darkness and silence. Isla was sleeping deeply after Rosa's happy birthday night, her lips still warm with the lingering taste of that first kiss. But suddenly she jolted awake. A strange sound somewhere. Footsteps, a soft bump, a muffled groan, strangled before it could become a scream. The survival instinct sharpened by years of living inside. Fear snapped on at once. Isa sat up, her heart hammering out of rhythm, listening hard. Something was wrong. She knew it in every cell of her body. She slipped out of bed, opened her door, and stepped into the hallway. What she saw made her blood turn to ice. 2 guards who were supposed to be posted on this floor lay motionless on the ground, a small pool of blood spreading beneath their heads. And at the far end of the hall, 2 dark shapes were moving toward Rosa's room. Isa did not think. She drew a deep breath and screamed with everything she had. "Intruders! Sound the alarm!" Her voice echoed through the mansion, shattering the late-night stillness. The 2 shadows whipped around, and in the moonlight spilling through the windows, Isa saw their faces. 2 unfamiliar men, their faces covered, knives in their hands. They did not hesitate. They charged straight at her. But Isla did not run away. She ran the other way toward Rosa's door, throwing her body in front of it. If you want to get in, you will have to step over my corpse. One of the attackers lunged, knife raised high. Isla swung her arm and grabbed the heavy brass lamp base from the table beside the door. She whipped it up and slammed it into his shoulder. He staggered, but the other man was already behind her. Issa turned, lifting the lamp base to block, but she was too slow. The cold blade sliced into her arm and blood burst out hot and shocking. She clenched her teeth and took the pain, refusing to drop the weapon. She could not fall. Not now. Not with Rosa behind this door. Issa Dante's roar tore down the hallway. He appeared like a storm, eyes savage, a gun in his hand. Behind him came Marco and 5 more guards, all armed. The attackers turned to face the new threat, but they were out of time. Dante fired and the bullet tore through the shoulder of one of them. He went down screaming. The other was subdued by Marco in seconds. His arm wrenched behind his back. His face slammed to the floor. But Dante did not care about them. He ran to Isla, who was braced against the wall, blood streaming from her arm onto the marble tile. Her face was pale, but she was still standing, still gripping the lamp base, still blocking Rosa's door. And no! Dante dropped to his knees beside her, both arms gathering her up, his face white as a corpse. Call a doctor. Call a doctor. Right now, he shouted, his voice breaking with panic. It was the first time anyone in the Moretti family had seen their boss lose control. Dante Moretti, the cold man whose hand never trembled when he ordered someone killed, was trembling as he held a young woman in his arms, eyes red, voice thick with anguish. Do not leave me. Do you hear me? Do not you dare leave me. Isla lifted her uninjured hand and touched his cheek. I am fine, she whispered, forcing a smile through the pain. It is just a scratch. Mr. Rosa, is she safe? Dante stared at her as if he could not believe what he was hearing. She had just been stabbed, blood all over her, and her first question was still about his mother. Rosa is safe, Marco said behind them. She is in her room. She is not hurt. Isla exhaled in relief, as if the wound in her arm no longer mattered. Dante held her tighter, his forehead pressing to hers. You almost died protecting my mother again. Are you out of your mind? Maybe, Issa, her voice weak. But I promised I would not abandon her. Remember? The doctor arrived within 15 minutes and began treating Isla's injury. Fortunately, the cut was not deep enough to be dangerous. Only deep enough to need a few stitches. Meanwhile, Marco interrogated the 2 attackers. It did not take long for them to spill the truth. Serena Castellano hired us. One of them said, his face twisted with pain. She paid $50,000 for us to kill the old woman and the Puerto Rican girl. She is in an apartment in the city near the harbor. Dante rose and his face settled back into the cold mask of a Mafia boss. But behind those gray eyes, fury burned like hell. He walked to Isla, bent down, and kissed her forehead. Rest, I will be back. Then he turned to Marco, his voice like ice. Find her right now. Isla had almost lost her life. And now Dante was going hunting for Serena. The shabby apartment sat inside an abandoned building near the Chicago harbor. Dante kicked the rotted door off its hinges and stepped inside. Marco and 4 guards close behind him. And there, in the foul, dim corner of the room, Serena Castellano crouched like an animal driven into a dead end. The golden blonde hair she once wore like a crown was now filthy and tangled. The eyes that used to glitter with calculation had gone feral and wild, and her expensive dress had become crumpled scraps of fabric. When she saw Dante, she sprang up, pressed herself into the corner wall, clawing at the air like someone unhinged. You destroyed everything, Serena shrieked, her voice thin and splintering. I was supposed to be the queen of this family. I was supposed to have everything. But you took it all from me because of that. Puerto Rican. Dante stood there, staring at the woman he had once intended to marry. The rage inside him was still there, hot and violent. She had beaten his mother. She had hired men to kill Isla. She deserved to die. In the past, Dante had never hesitated to end traitors. But today, he remembered Isla. He remembered the warm brown of her eyes, remembered the way she spoke about forgiveness, remembered the quiet way she had been changing him day by day. Dante drew his gun and Serena flinched, certain this was her last breath, but he did not pull the trigger. Instead, he lowered the weapon and spoke cold and calm. You will live, but in prison. That is a punishment worse than death. He turned to Marco. Call the police. Hand her over with all the evidence of abuse and hiring killers. Serena screamed in protest, but no one cared to listen. The police arrived within 20 minutes, cuffed her, and took her away. When the patrol car vanished into the night, Dante watched it go, and for the first time in his life, he felt he had done the right thing. Not with violence, but with justice. 1 year later, the Moretti mansion had changed completely. A polished brass sign at the gate bore the elegantly engraved words, Rosa's Heart Foundation. This was no longer the headquarters of a mafia family. This was the home of a charity dedicated to supporting caregivers of the elderly and victims of domestic violence. Isa Navarro, now the foundation's chief executive officer, stood in the office that had once been Dante's study, looking out the window. She had come a long way from an orphaned girl fired into a rainy night to a woman running an organization that helped hundreds of people every year. Rosa Moretti, now 77 years old, was fully healthy. She walked normally, spoke clearly, and spent most of her time volunteering for the very foundation that carried her name. She often told the story of herself and Hila to those who came seeking help, a reminder that there is always hope, even in the darkest circumstances. And Dante, he had laid down the sword as he promised. He handed the family's work over entirely to Marco, focusing on legalizing assets and investing in clean fields. He was no longer the feared mafia boss. He was only Dante Moretti, a man trying to become the best version of himself. That spring, a small wedding was held in the garden of the Moretti mansion. There were no hundreds of guests, no press, no display for the elite, only the people they loved most, fresh flowers and gentle sunlight filtering through the magnolia branches. Isla walked across the grass, hand in hand with Rosa. The older woman led her to the front where Dante waited in a white suit, gray eyes shining with happiness. Rosa placed Isa's hand into Dante's, then stepped back, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Dante held Ella's hand, looked into her eyes, and spoke his vows. You taught me that true strength is not power, but compassion. You taught me that trust is not weakness, but courage. And you taught me that a man is not measured by what he owns, but by how he treats those who are weaker than he is. Isa smiled, happy tears bright in her eyes. And you taught me that even the most broken people can change, that the past does not define the future, and that sometimes the worst storms carry us to the most beautiful shores. They exchanged rings, and when their lips met in their first kiss as husband and wife, applause rose across the garden. Rosa cried, Marco cried. Even Father Antonio had to secretly wipe away tears. That evening, after the guests had gone, Dante and Isla stood by the living room window, looking out at a garden flooded with sunset light. Their fingers were woven together, her shoulder resting against his, and together they looked at the home they had rebuilt from ashes. You two come in for dinner, Rosa's voice called from behind them, warm and bright. Dante and Isla looked at each other, smiled, and turned back inside because this was their life now. No more darkness, no more secrets, no more fear, only love, forgiveness, and a family rebuilt from broken pieces. Some storms come to destroy, but some storms come to wash away what no longer belongs to us, leaving behind only what truly matters. The Moretti mansion had survived its storm, and what remained was love, forgiveness, and a family reborn from ashes. This story brings us many precious lessons about life. It is a lesson in courage, in standing up to protect the vulnerable, even at the cost of yourself, as Isa. It is a lesson in redemption and change. When Dante recognized his mistake and had the courage to repair what he had broken, it is a lesson in resilience. When Rosa never surrendered hope even in the darkest circumstances, and most importantly, it is a lesson in how love and forgiveness can heal. Every wound can change even the coldest hearts in real life. All of us face storms. They may be betrayal, injustice, or pains we think we can't survive. But remember that, like Allah, we always have a choice, the choice to stand up or to fall, the choice to forgive or to cling to hate, the choice to become a better version of ourselves, or to let the past define the future. How do you feel about this story? Have you ever faced a situation where you had to stand up to protect someone, even knowing you would have to pay a price? Or have you ever forgiven someone, even though they hurt you deeply? Share your story in the comments below. We truly look forward to hearing what you feel from the depths of your heart. If this story touched your heart, please press the like button and share this video with the people you believe also need to hear it. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss moving stories of love, justice, and redemption every day. Wishing everyone watching this video abundant health, a peaceful life, and happiness. No matter how hard life becomes, remember that after the rain, the sky clears, and kind people like you deserve to receive the very best in return. Goodbye and see you again in the next